This is XXXTentacion's mom, and this is his dad, and these are the men who killed their son. It's bad enough that these men are still alive today, but what's even worse is the fact that one of them even had the bile to disrespect X's mom and dad in court. Why on earth did he do that? Well, you're about to find out.
You're gonna hear testimony and you're gonna see evidence about 5 lives. 5 lives that converged on June 18th of 2018, costing the victim in this case, Jahseh Onfroy, his life.
Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, Robert Allen, and Dedrick Williams. These are the identities of the men involved in XXX's killing. Today we know that Boatwright was the one who pulled the trigger on the late rapper. And annoyingly enough, he was also the one who blew mock kisses at XXX's family. But to break down his own disrespectful gesture, let's consider other instances of disrespect from his 3 accomplices. For the first, we'll look at Dedrick Williams. He was in the vehicle that blocked XXX on the tragic afternoon, but he wasn't part of the 2 that came down to clip the late rapper. Dedrick Williams was their getaway driver. CCTV footage had picked him up earlier in the company of another accomplice, Robert Allen, as they walked into the dealership where they had first spotted XXX. Now we'll talk about Allen in a second, but you must know that before Dedrick got involved in XXX's killing, he was something of a nutcase himself. The young man was known in the streets as a tattoo artist whose nickname was Tattoo Man Chucky. Now that wasn't the most colorful part of Dedrick Williams' life. According to authorities, he'd been linked to cases of aggravated assault. Back in 2014, he was charged for pointing a gun at his girlfriend's head, then got arrested on a couple of cases for cocaine and weapons possession. Funny enough, the man had never done time, but that doesn't mean he was warm-blooded. It also doesn't mean he was smart. When the cops would eventually arrest him, he was driving a 2004 Honda Accord without a driver's license. Now, throughout his trial and at his sentencing, Dedrick kept a poker face. You could tell he didn't want to go to jail. Disrespecting the rapper's family would have been the last thing on his mind. The next deadbeat from the 4 who killed XXX that got a chance to sit with the late rapper's family through trial was Robert Allen. Like Williams, Allen was also in the car when the hit took place, but he was the least active contributor to the entire hit. And while he might have followed Williams into the dealership to get a closer look at X, he was a passive observer when the hit actually went down. And maybe that's why he pleaded guilty. A full year before the trial, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of second-degree murder and agreed to testify against the other defendants. And boy, did he sing.
What kind of firearm did Michael Boatwright have on that June 18th, June 17th time frame?
If I'm not mistaken, it's a GSK 22 rifle.
And I've called cap on the things that he said about his involvement, but he made convicting his colleagues remarkably easy for the prosecutors, so maybe that counts for something. Maybe he deserves the chance to save his skin. Maybe. You also gotta know that he didn't disrespect XXX's family in court, but he still hasn't been sentenced, so who knows? Now the next culprit, however, Trayvon Newsom, nah, he was something different.
The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. During the course of the crime committed, did the defendant, Trayvon Newsom.
Can you see that? That smirk? I'm not surprised. He and Boatwright were the main aggressors. They were the one who tried to grab X's bag of cash from him. And it was specifically Trayvon who ran to the other side of the vehicle, distracting XXX. Thank heavens the jury found him guilty because that smirk made my skin crawl. I mean, I wouldn't call it straight up disrespect though. And again, he wasn't outrightingly sending kisses to the victim's family. You know what I mean? Now, if you were asking me, I'd say I knew who he was sending those kisses to. This woman. Cleopatra Drina Bernard, XXXTentacion's mother. Cleopatra raised her son, Jahseh Onfroy, on her own in Plantation, Florida. She was just 17 when she got pregnant for Ricardo Onfroy, X's father. His old man wasn't financially supportive, but he was physically and emotionally present. And while that might not be much to some people, considering the backdrop of hardship they were coming from, it was something. X himself would say his mother struggled to take care of him, which wasn't too surprising because she was just a teenager. He was raised by his grandmother and some hired caretakers because his mother had to work jobs to provide for him. And this kind of just makes that kiss-blowing act from Boatwright more disrespectful. Now X would say despite his parents' best efforts, he got used to seeing violence firsthand on a daily basis since the age of 6. If it wasn't his parents fighting, it was some corporal punishment he suffered from his father Dwayne or some man trying to use violent riz on his mother. It never went well for those men. XXX would stab one of them when he was 6. Eventually, things got worse for the late rapper when his father was arrested on drug-related charges and sent to jail for 10 years. After time spent, he was deported to Jamaica. Today, his pops expressed his regret that he wasn't there when X was maturing. In an interview, he recently said, he developed his own rules. He developed his own way of looking at life because now his teenage years are coming on. Who's the male role model? Who's the male figure that's going to show him how a boy is supposed to behave at 13? Who's going to teach him how to play football or soccer or basketball? Who's going to teach him sporting activities? Who's going to show him how to speak to women? Kinda hurts when you realize his relationship with his mom got worse when his father got locked up. And it wasn't like she was trying, she just couldn't control him. Because we gotta admit one fact, as much as we love XXX, he was a pretty violent young man. He says it himself. He got in fights all the time.
Why, you're a fighter? You've been getting in a lot of fights?
Bro, I've been fighting since I was a kid. Come close,
bro. He knows. What, he's always been throwing the hands or what?
I mean, I've been there plenty situations and like plenty fights. Like, I knew him for 4 years. Yeah, we all know.
In school, he fought. On the school bus, he was multitasking beatdowns and coming out on top on every turn. And it doesn't help that he grew up in Lauderdale, easily one of the most notorious neighborhoods in Florida. By the time XXX developed his interest in music, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and his mama only began to get the idea of what could be done differently. So she struck a deal with young X. She would pay for proper studio sessions on the weekends if he stayed in school. Nah, it didn't work. X would get into armed robbery and serve time like his dad at least 3 times before he was 20. Now, before this clown called Boatwright disrespected XXX's mom in court, I heard a lot of other disrespectful comments thrown around, especially from fans. And this is kind of sad. Many of y'all for some reason feel like Cleopatra wasn't present in her son's life and only began loving up on him when he died, and she got access to his estate. I'll play devil's advocate for y'all for a second before I switch it up. I can understand, as disrespectful as y'all sound, her life after her son's death might seem like a lot. Hanging out with rappers, dressing up lavishly, looking all fly. But I gotta ask you one question. What would you have her do? No one was there when she had to deal with the trauma of her son's demise. How many of y'all know what it takes to raise a teenager with violent tendencies without strong support coming from anywhere?
I mean, I'm gonna keep it 1,000. I'm gonna keep it 1,000. Like, if judge me, you wanna judge me, like, I'll keep it to a minimum. Me and my mom went through it hard. Like, my mom was just in situations where she couldn't take care of me. You feel me? Like, done drive-bys on me when I was like a jit type. Like.
And for those saying she wasn't present in XXX's life, he's spoken of his mother's background. She was born in Jamaica and didn't grow up in a stable environment or have the right support. But in his own words, he still loved her.
Raising a kid, honestly, was on her last priorities. You feel me? So what she did was she passed me from hand to hand to people that could take care of me, you know?
It might not have worked out as planned, but at least she had him in mind. And when he grew older and got that 6-figure deal on the back of his song, Look at Me, X bought a house and moved in with his girlfriend and his mom. His mom. In fact, on the day he got shot, he was gonna go with his mom before his step-uncle finally tagged along. And ever since XXX's demise, she's been taking good care of his girlfriend and his son, her grandson, Gekume Onfroy. So yeah, no one should disrespect X's mom, and definitely not Boatwright. But hey, that disrespect might have lasted a moment, but guess who's gonna be behind bars for life?
During the course of the crime committed, did the defendant, Michael Boatwright, actually inflict death to Jose Onfroy as a result of discharging a firearm in his possession? Yes.